45 degrees on the Stewart Highway, 700 kilometers to the nearest workshop. Out there, nobody cares what a truck looks like. They care whether it gets them home. At number 6, we've got the Freightliner Argosy, built from 1999 right through to 2020. And there's a good reason plenty of Australian truckies won't put their name down for one. It's a cabover. You sit right on top of the front axle, and every bit of corrugation on the Great Northern comes straight up through the seat and into your back. Ask a bloke who's done a season in one across the Nullarbor, and he'll tell you about the noise, the heat coming off that 15-liter Detroit sitting underneath him, and the fact that there's nothing in front of you but a windscreen. Then there's the servicing. To get at the engine, you tilt the whole cab forward, which means clearing everything off the dash, checking your overhead room, and finding a bit of flat ground to do it on. Plenty of mechanics in the bush hate the job, but here's the thing. The driveline underneath that cab is about as tough as anything that's ever run on an Australian highway. Most of them came out with the Detroit Series 60, the Cummins Signature, or the Cat C15, and those engines regularly go past 1,000,000 kilometers before anyone talks about pulling one down. The Series 60 in particular has a reputation for just keeping on going, as long as you feed it clean oil and clean fuel. And the Argosy earned its keep for a reason. 25 meters is 25 meters, and with no bonnet out the front, you get more trailer behind you, which is why so many B-double linehaul operators ran them up and down the Hume for the best part of 20 years. Freightliner finally stopped building them in 2020, not because the truck was worn out, but because it couldn't be made to meet the newer rules. Compare that to a modern prime mover full of emissions, gear, and sensors, where one fault code can park you on the side of the road until somebody drives out with a laptop. The Argosy is loud, it's uncomfortable, it's awkward to work on. It also doesn't stop, and the machine sitting at number 1 takes that idea a fair bit further. At number 5, we've got the Volvo F12, built from 1977 through to 1993, and this one gets knocked back for reasons that have almost nothing to do with the truck itself. Back then, if you rolled into a roadhouse in a European cabover, you copped it. The bloke in the bonneted Kenworth reckoned you were driving a car with a trailer on the back. And the F12 didn't help itself out west, because 12 liters and around 380 horsepower is fine on the Hume. But it's not what an owner-driver wants under him when he's hauling a triple up the Stewart. Then there's the gearbox. Volvo ran a synchromesh box, and a truckie who'd spent 15 years on a Road Ranger got in one of these and hated it inside 100 kilometers. Wrong pattern, wrong feel, wrong everything. Add a low front end that a big roo can fold straight into the radiator, and a service network that in the 80s was thin once you got past the coast, and you can see why plenty of blokes just said no. But have a look at what's actually in it. The TD121 is a 12-liter inline 6, and it is one of the toughest engines Volvo has ever put in a truck. There are F12s that have gone well past 2 million kilometers on original bottom ends. No electronics, no emissions gear. A pump and injectors any diesel bloke in a country town can sort out with a spanner and a bit of patience. The cab is fully tilting, the layout is honest, and Volvo has been assembling trucks at Wacol in Queensland since 1972, so it was never the orphan people made it out to be. Line one up against a brand new prime mover today, and the new one wins on comfort, wins on safety, and loses badly the moment a sensor goes down at 2 in the morning. The F12 doesn't have a sensor to go down, that's the whole point. And the next one on the list is a truck that will rattle your fillings loose and still outlive everything parked next to it. At number 4, we've got the Mack Cruiseliner, built from 1978 through to 1988. And if you want to know why truckies knocked this one back, go and sit in one for a full shift. It's a cabover with a steel cab. The engine tunnel comes up between the seats, and on a 40-degree day out past Cloncurry, that cab turns into an oven with a steering wheel in it. It's loud. The bunk behind you is a shelf, not a bed. And then there's the Maxitorque box. Mack ran their own triple countershaft gearbox with their own shift pattern, and a bloke who learned on a Road Ranger climbs into a cruiseliner and suddenly can't drive. Some never get the hang of it. The other complaint is the camelback rear suspension. It's leaf springs and very little else. And on corrugation, it will find every filling in your head and every weld in your trailer. Mechanics aren't much keener, because almost everything under it is Mack's own gear rather than off-the-shelf American driveline. So you're waiting on a Mack part instead of grabbing something off a shelf in town. Now here's why they're still working. That camelback suspension has almost nothing in it to break. No airbags, no leveling valve, no sensors, just steel doing what steel does. The Mack E6 is a big cam in line 6, making somewhere in the low 300s of horsepower. and it was built to lug rather than rev, which is exactly what you want on a long climb with a heavy load behind you. These things were assembled here in Queensland. They ran quarry, work, cattle, and general freight for decades. And plenty of them are still turning a wheel today in tipper and dog work, where nobody cares how loud the cab is. Compare that to a modern truck sitting in a depot waiting on an electronic module. The Cruiseliner is a truck you can fix with a hammer, a spanner, and a swear word. And the one at number 3 was killed off by something that had nothing to do with the truck. At number 3, we've got the International S-Line and the T-Line, built at Dandenong in Victoria from 1982 through to 1993. And this is the one where the badge did more damage than the truck ever did. International wound up its Australian manufacturing in the early 90s. And the moment that happened, the story went around every roadhouse in the country. No factory, no parts, no support, no resale. Blokes who had never turned a wheel in one were telling each other not to touch it. On top of that, the cabs had a reputation for rust around the mounts and the doors if they lived near the coast. And the wiring in an older one can be a rat's nest by the time it's had 3 owners and 2 bull bars. So the S-Line ended up doing tipper work and local freight while the Kenworths got the line haul. Here's the part nobody bothered to check. There is almost nothing proprietary underneath these trucks. Most of them left Dandenong with a Cummins Big Cam, a Cat 3406, or a Detroit 8V92, an Eaton Road Ranger box, and Rockwell diffs. That is the most common driveline in the country. Every one of those parts is still on a shelf somewhere, and every mechanic from Perth to Rockhampton has pulled one apart. So the truck that supposedly had no part support is actually easier to keep alive today than a 5-year-old European prime mover with a proprietary gearbox and a factory diagnostic port. The Big Cam is a 14-liter mechanical engine, no computer anywhere near it, and it will do 1,000,000 kilometers and then do it again after a rebuild you can actually afford. Break down in one of these 600 kilometers from town, and the fix is a fuel line, a starter, or a set of injectors. Not a laptop and a 2-day wait. The tin might be tired, the bones aren't. And number 2 is a truck that had the whole country laughing at the badge on the front right up until the blokes running them worked out what the cab was made of. At number 2, we've got the Ford Louisville, the L-Series. Sold here from 1979 right through to 1998. And this is the truck that got laughed at harder than anything else on this list. The problem was the badge. Half the country associated Ford with a ute in the driveway, so a bloke turning up to a line haul job in a Louisville copped it before he'd even opened the door. Then Ford sold the heavy truck business in the late 90s, the name changed, and every owner-driver in the country decided the resale had just gone through the floor. Fair enough. A Louisville is worth a fraction of a Kenworth of the same age and always will be. The cab is plain, the trim is plain, and nobody ever bought one to look flash at a roadhouse. But here's what the blokes running them worked out. That cab is aluminium. It doesn't rust. Park a steel cab up in the territory or run it along the coast for 20 years, and you'll be chasing rot around the mounts and the door frames. The Louisville just sits there. Underneath it is the same honest American driveline everyone else was running. A Cummins or a Cat or a Detroit, an Eaton Road Ranger and Rockwell diffs. All mechanical, all fixable, all still available. The setback front axle gives it a turning circle that surprises people the first time they swing one around in a tight yard. And because they were cheap to buy secondhand, they went into the sort of work that kills trucks. Tippers, cattle, quarry, council. Loaded rough, worked hard, serviced when someone got around to it, and they kept going anyway. Go and have a look around any regional yard in this country, and you'll still find one earning its keep with a number on the door and 40 years on the clock. Cheap, plain, badly badged, and almost impossible to kill. The truckies who knocked them back were judging the front of the truck. The blokes who bought them were judging the rest of it. Which brings us to number 1, and it's the oldest design here by a long way. And at number 1, we've got the Mack R-Series, the one every bloke out here calls the Flintstone. And this design was in production from 1966 all the way through to the end of the 90s. Think about that. A truck drawn up before the moon landing was still rolling out of the factory while blokes were driving around with mobile phones. And plenty of truckies will not go near one. An early R model is heavy in the hands, hot, loud, and the bunk is a joke. The Maxidork box has its own shift pattern that catches out anyone raised on a Road Ranger. The camelback rear end is leaf springs and steel, so every corrugation on a station track goes straight through the chassis and into you. And after 10 hours of that, you feel like you've been in a blue. Mechanics have their own list, because the engine, the gearbox, and the diffs are all Mack's own, so you can't just ring around town and grab something off a shelf. Ask a workshop to quote a Mack driveline job and watch the face. So why is it number one? Because nothing else on this list has proved itself over that many decades in this country. These were assembled here, they hauled cattle, logs, fuel, and quarry rock through every part of the Outback. And there are R models still working today, with a rebuild or two behind them and no plans to stop. The E6 and later the E7 are big low-revving inline sixes, built to lug a heavy load up a long hill all day at low revs, which is exactly the opposite of how a modern engine is tuned. Everything on it can be repaired rather than replaced. A cracked bracket gets welded up in a shed, a leaking line gets made on the spot. A tired engine comes out, gets done, and goes back in for a fraction of what a new prime mover costs to sit in a yard. There is no module to fail and no dealer to wait on. That is the whole reason a truck designed in the mid-60s is still turning a wheel while trucks built 15 years ago are sitting in a paddock with a fault code nobody can clear. None of these are easy trucks. Let's be honest about it. They drink more fuel than anything built in the last 10 years. The cabs are hot and loud, and there are days when a part takes a week to turn up. But every one of them was built to be repaired instead of replaced, and that is the difference. A cracked mount gets welded, a pump gets rebuilt. An engine comes out, gets done properly, and goes back in. There is no module waiting to strand you 700 kilometers from the nearest workshop. That's why blokes who knocked these trucks back 30 years ago are watching them still turn a wheel today. If you reckon the old iron still has a place out on the road, stick around. And tell me in the comments which one of these you've driven or pulled apart yourself, because someone out there has done 1,000,000 kilometers in one. A truckie trusts the machine he can fix. A manufacturer sells the one he can't.